Governance, Audit and Standards Committee, and we'll kick off. And this first item could be quite long, actually. Apologies. Do I have any apologies? Yes.
Apologies from Stephen Jeremiah, and I'm substituting.
Okay.
Apologies from Sean Dunhammer, and I'm substituting.
Okay.
I'm subbing.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Lovely. Thank you very much. And also, members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interest in any item of the agenda. No? Okay, that's fine. And the minutes of the meeting on the 19th of May, which are on page 13 to 14. I'm sure it seems as though it was longer than that, but any matters arising from those minutes that don't come up later? No, so I propose that the minutes are a true and accurate record. Can I have a seconder? Yeah, thank you. And all those in favour? That's lovely. And anybody against? Abstentions? Thanks. Lovely. Okay, so we have Gavin Barker with us from Forvis Mazars, our accountant, who is going to discuss with us the audit progress report for the council's external auditors and note progress made to the 24-25 audit. So do you want to go first, Gavin?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yes,
can you hear me okay?
Yes,
can
yes,
everybody
we can.
hear okay? Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So this is our audit progress report. Members of the committee might remember that we brought our audit strategy memorandum, our audit plan, to the last meeting of the committee on the 19th of May, and that set out our audit approach in quite a bit of detail. Garima Garg, who is the audit manager from Forvis Mazars, joined that call. She's on the call tonight, listening to the deliberations of the committee as well. But we didn't record in the plan. In the plan, we had Varsha Sharma down as the audit manager, but we're just recording in this report that Garima Garg is the new audit manager for the 24-25 audit. Everything else we set out in the plan is unchanged from what we presented to you at your last meeting. The rest of the report includes references to a number of national publications and topical issues which may be of interest to members. You'd be very pleased to hear I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to pick out a couple for your attention. And the first one I'm going to sort of pick out is on page 20 of our report, where we've included the outturn data for the 23-24 audit in terms of audits that were delivered as either unqualified opinions or disclaimed opinions due to the backstop. And it is sort of quite shocking results for the 23-24 audit nationally, in that 216 of the 459 audits were subject to a disclaimed opinion. And you were one of the lucky ones in that you were one of the only 174 authorities out of that total that received an unqualified opinion on the financial statements. And I just thought it was important for members to realise that although we have sort of delivered everything here at Broxtowe in terms of last year's audit, and our plans are in place to deliver this year's audit, the 24-25 audit, that this is against the backdrop of complete crisis in the audit market. I just thought members ought to be aware of that. And linked to that, the only other item I wanted to draw to your attention is on page 13 of our report, and that just highlights the government's consultation on overhauling the local audit system in England. So this is part of the government's response to what it describes in the consultation as a broken system. And that has moved forward since we shared this report with you. There is now a bill being laid before Parliament, the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, and that will lead to the creation of a local audit office. And that local audit office will take things forward in the future. For those of you who have been in this space for some time, there might be a feeling of deja vu, because it does feel a little bit like the Audit Commission, but without the inspection functions. But if that is the case, it feels a bit like closing the stable door years after the horse was bolted. But anyway, the government's put these arrangements in place to try and address the crisis in local audit going forward. So I just thought it was important to bring that to members' attention. So that's all I wanted to say. It's a long report, but a fairly brief presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Martin, you want to say anything at all?
Not at this stage. I mean, I think just again, I think to reiterate, you know, we published our draft accounts before the statutory deadline and shared them with Gavin and Garima, and you know, we're looking forward to the audit commencing in early September. We've made contact in terms of putting together further information for the audit, and we're very much looking forward to cracking on and keeping ahead of the game again this year if we can.
Yeah, that's great. That's fine. Lovely. Has anybody got any questions or yes?
Yes, I was interested in the comment that was said by Mr. Barker that the system, the government maintained the system, is broken, and that it's going to be repaired by opening up a local office. I'm not clear how that is going to work, because you've still got to have auditors to do all the work, whether it's done through the current arrangements or whether it's done at a local level. I'm not quite clear how that is going to change things, so perhaps you could enlighten us on this. I know Mr. Farage seems to have a lot of people about who could go in and look at accounts, so I don't know whether that's a possible way forward.
Whether we're qualified, that's another matter.
Any comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor. Yes, this is just part of the government's response to the crisis in local audit. Another part of the response was the backstop arrangements that were put in place to basically allow a sort of resetting of the system, which is what led to a lot of the disclaimed audit opinions in 23-24. And as part of that response, a lot of audits were disclaimed in 23-24, but the idea was that was to get the system back on track and sort of for improvements to be made going forward. But so it's not merely by the creation of the local audit office that sort of improvements are being made. It is also incumbent upon all the suppliers to address the resourcing issues that they've experienced in the past. Recent guidance on how to rebuild assurance where audits have been subject to disclaimers has included some helpful guidance on how we get out of that position in audits that have been subject to a disclaimed opinion. So there are other things going on, but the creation of the local audit office is a sort of a key part of the government's agenda as well as part of that.
Right, okay. Well, thank goodness we're not in that situation here in Broxtowe, because we got it right. But having said that, a lot of the authorities that were able to do it was because of the actual pension situation, and that was a bit of a real self-inflicted wound, really. But there we go. Has anybody else got any questions at all? No, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much for attending. And you don't have to
Thank you, Chair.
You don't have to sit through the rest of the committee like you used to do before now.
Well, no, we continue to see it as important to be in
yes,
attendance, but
yes.
we'll put our cameras off so that we're not a distraction.
Lovely.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you. So that was a noting report, and so item 5, which is page 41 to 48, is the over to Chris, the internal audit progress report.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening again, councillors. This first report this evening is the regular progress report on internal audit activity since the last meeting. Been quite a positive quarter, as you'll see from the table in Appendix 1 to the report on page 43 of the bundle. Quite a few substantial assurance opinions being given on some some important systems, so that's very positive to see. Also worth noting, because we've done quite a few more than we normally do, you'll note that during the period we did 29 financial appraisals of potential contractors, potential suppliers, and a large number of grant recipients for the UK SPF scheme. I just draw attention to it simply because it's been quite an important stream of work that we've done during this quarter. I've got nothing to add, particularly by way of an update on completed audits at this stage, but as we look to the second part of the report, the follow-up, members might recall that at the previous meeting of this committee there was quite a bit of debate around the stores audit, and in particular the stock take. There's a short paragraph in the report that just summarises what I knew of the position at the time I submitted this report. But as fortune would have it, the Assistant Director for Environment is actually on the meeting tonight, and she's happy to provide her own update right now. So over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just to update members on where we are with regard to progress, stock take has been completed, and that's provided a clear baseline of our inventory. We are currently working through anomalies, so the team are currently addressing any anomalies identified during the stock take, and that work is expected to be finalised by the end of next week. During this process, we've identified data inputting as an issue. So to address this, additional resource has been allocated to improve accuracy and efficiency moving forward. In terms of the stores resource and review, members might be aware that we are undertaking a review in collaboration with housing in terms of we're looking at ways forward. And in terms of procedures, they will be completed by the end of the month.
Thank you for that. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Yes, Chairman, as I recall, the issue of the store's stock take was one that it had not been done for many, many years. And I was just wondering whether any discrepancies had been found as a result of the recent stock take. You say you're ironing out anomalies. Perhaps you could expand on that a little bit as well.
Through you, Chair. Yeah. With regards to, so Councillor, and I can't speak for my predecessors with regards to the big gap, but I can assure you, since taking my role, I have prioritised those areas, especially sort of since that was highlighted with the internal audit result. I identified very early coming into post that stores was one of the areas that I wanted to focus on. That audit was key in understanding and identifying any gaps, and we're now making steady progress to close those. In terms of the anomalies, it's been put down, so when the team have been working through those, they aren't significant, but they have identified that there's been an error with inputting, and that's currently being rectified. But as I said, the anomalies they're finding are not significant.
Chairman, I was just trying to establish whether or not there's been any significant loss to the council that's been identified, any significant discrepancies between what you've got in the store and what's been going out and what you've got on the book, so to speak.
So through you, Chair, no, as I said, the anomalies that we're finding are not significant.
Okay, that's fine. Any more questions at all on the internal audit progress report? And it's quite good that there's been a few done in April, May and June, and there's only been one action, and that's very minor. So that's good news. Okay, well, thank you very much. So it's a noting report, it's noted. And the next item is item number 6, which is the internal audit review. Again.
Thank you, Chair. So this second report from internal audit is the annual report, the annual review for the financial year 24-25, which sort of provides an overview, a review of the work that internal audit completed during the year. On page 55, as members can see, there is the summary table of all the audits completed during the year. As you can see, generally very positive. Obviously, we make recommendations, but the vast majority of substantial or reasonable assurance. I suppose it's maybe a little digression. It's always worth noting that that assurance opinion for myself as the Chief Audit Executive, as we're called, that's the most important column for me, because that's what feeds into the overall opinion that I give for the annual governance statement, which you'll just see on the previous page, page 54. Where just boxed out there in green text. I don't know if it's come through as green in your papers, but that's the most important paragraph in this whole report for me. It's that on the basis of the work completed and all the various other bits of work, formal and informal, that internal audit complete throughout the year, I'm happy to endorse that opinion that the overall internal control environment is satisfactory with regard to mitigating the key risks that the council faces. The remainder of the detail of the report, as members will see, refers to a few statistics on page 57 regarding completion of audits, number of audits complete, number of audit reports issued, and so forth. A little bit about the sort of ad hoc work that we've done, and some of the and a little reference to the quality assurance programme that internal audit is subject to as well. There we are. That's the essence of the report. I'm happy to take any questions through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions, observations? Yes, that's right.
Chairman, on page 55, the table there, we've already talked about stores. I don't want to raise that again. But another area where we've had limited assurance is in allotments. I seem to remember this being discussed before, and the report was issued in March of this year. And we've got two high priority actions. Can we be reminded as to what they were and have they been dealt with? I also note on page 57 the performance overview, and the top item there on on performance overview talks about approaching 100% now, but overall 72% of the planned audits were complete, and the reason given is a combination of a lag of overdue audits, but also a period of sickness. And I just wonder whether, when we have a period of sickness that is going to impact upon performance delivery, whether any consideration is given to taking on appropriate temporary staff if they are available, because this is clearly an important area of work that needs to be done. And I accept that if you've got a relatively small team, if you've got one person off sick, then it can have a significant impact. And my final point, Chairman, is on page 58, 6.4, the corporate counter-fraud activity and national fraud initiative. We get an annual report on counter-fraud activity. Now, I just wonder whether this committee ought to have a more regular report on counter-fraud activity with some detail of what has been covered, what has been done, and what fraud, if any, has been detected or prevented. This is obviously the Governance, Audit and Standards Committee, and I just wonder if an annual report is sufficiently robust in terms of the job that this committee is tasked to do.
So that's a fair point. I think you point out, I mean, obviously you'll not answer this yourself, but I think the words you used there were appropriate temporary staff, and in this sort of field, I don't know if other agencies would provide people that were able to do this sort of thing, but Chris?
Thank you, Chair. So, apologies if I missed something, but I'll try and respond to the questions in turn. So, I've noticed that Emma's popped up on screen again. So, the findings of the allotments audit from March were primarily administrative in terms of record keeping and retention of documentation for various allotment sites. I have discussed this with Emma previously, and she's provided me with an informal update, but as she's here and she's popped up, I invite her to talk herself. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So the paperwork and the filing system for the allotments has been modernised, made more formal and comprehensive. The procedure for that process is nearly finalised. As I said, that will be completed by the end of the month. All old files have been reviewed with unnecessary documents being disposed or deleted. Additional missing paperwork has been actively chased and obtained. We have created a far more robust management system for allotments.
Thank you. And the point about a more regular report, would that be possible, or?
In relation to fraud, what I propose is, how can I put this? So the reporting to the general management team has recently been improved. There was recently I forget, it was a fraud and mitigation assurance report was presented to the general management team just a couple of weeks ago. That was based upon returns provided by assistant directors, heads of service and other senior managers relating to providing assurance in each individual service area. That was quite extensive, and it covered not just financial matters such as purchase cards and procurement, but also more internal employee matters such as annual leave, controls over annual leave, controls over flexible working, and so on and so forth. So those kind of processes are very much in operation, and that's something I fully plan on reporting on in the annual report next quarter, at the next meeting in September. In terms of more regular reporting to this committee, I'd be happy to build on a section in the progress report that's currently in existence that makes reference to any counter-fraud activity that's been undertaken, both on a reactive and active basis. And it would be difficult to report in open committee if any fraud, the details of any fraud that was uncovered. But I can certainly provide a little something if we ever do find something. And just whilst we're on the topic, preempting the annual report, but as we're here, nothing has come to my attention since last September, since the last report, that would constitute any kind of significant fraudulent activity. So, yes, there we go.
Lovely. Any more questions, comments? We're very quiet over this end, aren't you? Okay, so again, that was noting. Thanks for that. So the next item is the major projects governance dashboard, and Chris again.
Thank you very much, Chair. Last report of the evening from myself. So this is the report to this committee that was requested by the leader a few years ago, that provides an update on the governance arrangements, some assurance over the governance arrangements in place for the council's four major capital projects that are in progress at this time. First being the housing delivery plan, the two central government, the Towns Fund for Stapleford and Kimberley Beans Business, previously known as the Kimberley Levelling Up Fund, and a new one for this report is the Bramcote Leisure Centre development. As the Bramcote Leisure Centre is becoming more and more realised as a project, it's become an appropriate time for internal audit to begin to review and monitor the governance arrangements in place for that. As previously, the report falls into two sections. First part is sort of overview from internal audit of a brief summary of any audits that have been completed in recent times, any findings about that and the follow-up on that. Obviously with Bramcote Leisure Centre just being a new one, no audit's been done on that yet, so there's nothing to report there, but as members might recall, it's included in the internal audit plan for this financial year. So at some point over the course of this financial year, we're providing a full report on that audit. The second part of the report is the compliance checklist that's been developed It's completed by the appropriate assistant director or head of service attached to each of these four project streams, and all their responses are provided in full transparency, full disclosure to the committee, and for their scrutiny. As I've summarised in the sort of front page to this report, I've got no significant concerns or issues to mention with any of these four streams, though obviously with the small caveat on that we haven't done any work on Bramford Leisure Centre, but nothing in the planning of that audit has given cause for any concern at this stage.
Right,
There we are.
for that.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Questions?
I'm going to get in first with a question on Bramford Leisure Centre. There seems to be a bit of an issue perhaps arising in that at the same time as we want to rebuild a new leisure centre, the school next door is going to be building a brand new school, and I'm just wondering, is that a risk? That there's two great big things going off at the same time, and the other thing is on that is that I think at some stage in the next year we're going to be told by central government that we can't spend any more major money, and we've got to try and get this in before that happens.
I'll do my best to answer both those questions.
Yeah.
There's a report I've drafted for Cabinet's consideration next Tuesday, but I'll give a couple of answers to your points. Yes, we are working closely with White Hills Academy Trust to ensure that their construction project for two schools and our project for Leisure Centre are coordinated together so they can both be delivered. We're meeting again next Tuesday with the construction company into the trust as well as our advisors. So you're right, this needs to be coordinated and planned together. In terms of the implication of LGR, yes, I think if our project does slip a bit further, there is a risk that a decision is made on LGR, and then there will be potentially a risk that a body looking at LGR would say put a pause on any large contracts or capital projects. That risk is in the new year. Right now we're pushing on with getting the designs into planning. We're making sure that we're building in a couple of suggestions from the swimming clubs into the designs, and we're working closely with, let's say, the school to make sure we can coordinate the build. But yeah, there's certainly risks with the project, and equally with funding, even as those two risks around planning and around the design are, as it were, mitigated out. There's still a risk of making sure that we have an affordable project, so that would need to be signed off by the Cabinet before we proceed.
Well, just as an observation, I don't expect you to answer this, is that I wonder if the government have actually thought about the implication on growth if every single local authority are told they can't spend any more money prior to the new authorities coming in. I've got a feeling they probably haven't thought about that. Any more questions at all on this? No? Okay, that's fine. That's a noting report. I said it before, but I do like the way that this report is set out. You can see for each project at the same time and not having to flick backwards to see what's happened. So I do like that. Right, so the next item is page 81, review of the Strategic Risk Register. And the committee has asked to resolve that the amendments to the Strategic Risk Register and the actions to mitigate risks are set out be approved. I propose that. Councillor Woodhead, do you want to second it? Yeah, okay. Thank you. And Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Yeah, I'm sure you'll recognise this as the regular update report to review the council's strategic risks. A summary of the council's risk management framework is provided in Appendix 1, and then Appendix 2 goes on to provide the proposed amendments to the strategic risk register following a meeting of the strategic risk management group in June. Members will note that the highest red risks remain failure to obtain adequate resources to achieve service objectives, failure of strategic leisure initiatives, and failure of key ICT systems linked to cyber risk. And an extract from the risk register showing these three risks is provided in Appendix 3. A couple of things I think to bring to members' attention. These include the potential opportunities, threats and risks presented by local government reorganisation. These continue to be monitored as the options are being developed for presentation to central government. And also, I think risk 18, corporate and or political leadership, the risk associated with that. Although the political risk has settled somewhat since the county council elections, it is proposed that the residual risk score should remain at 12 as an amber risk, pending the forthcoming changes to the council's corporate leadership. Other changes that we're putting forward are noted in the report, and happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Are you taking all the appendices as one? Okay,
Is that
fine.
our report as a whole?
Yeah. The first point I would raise, Chairman, on page 87, 3A, failure to deliver a housing repairs and compliance service. We've only got that flagged as amber at the moment, and 12 out of 20 as the residual risk. Looking at the wodge of complaints at the back of this report, I'm just wondering whether that has been put at too low a level at this stage. There may be improvements going forward, we will see. Failure, going over on to page 89, failure of the ICT systems is flagged as red, and it seems to me that we have had significant problems with IT. Certainly, we as councillors have had problems in receiving messages. We couldn't, Council Mrs. Owen in particular, couldn't get her council emails through for about a fortnight earlier on. I had an email the other day which had been held in the whatever system it is for supposedly filtering out malicious software, hardware, whatever way it is. And all it was an email from a resident in Strelly Village inviting me to a garden party. Now, I don't think I know that there are some areas of Strelly where there may be some subversive activity going on, but not sufficient to warrant blocking my emails. The annoying thing was, I didn't get notification that it was being held and could release it until the day after the event took place, which was hugely embarrassing. So, yes, it's very much red. In fact, it's bright red, and it doesn't seem to get a deal better. And I'm rapidly losing my patience with the ICT system in this council. Going over onto page 90, this has been touched upon. A natural disaster or deliberate act which affects a major part of the authority. Well, we could just put down the current government in big letters there, and that would cover a wide range of things. But I'm thinking of, in particular, of local government review. Now, I heard Mr. Payne say that local government review had been incorporated into various elements here, but I think it would be useful, and I made this point last time, and I'll keep on making it. I think it would be useful to have a separate risk assessment of local government review, and it bring to our attention the collectiveness of all the risks in the various areas associated with that, so we are fully aware of that. And this council still seems to think local government review is going to go away. Well, unfortunately, at a political level, I'm not so saying at an officer level, but it's not, unfortunately. It's not going to go away, and we need to be in a position to respond vigorously. Can I pick up, Chairman, number 19 on page 91? We've got there an amber warning for high levels of sickness. The inherent risk is 16, the residual risk is 6. When I last saw the sickness levels, I didn't think there had been a significant change, a significant reduction. I may be mistaken, and it may have changed more recently. So I'm wondering if that is well flagged up or not. at an amber risk. We still don't seem to have got on top. As I recall, it was running at nearly 2 weeks a year. Below that, it wasn't quite 2 weeks, but it was getting up towards 2 weeks a year of sickness leave. And then on page 93, coming to an old favourite, and I'm sure Mr. Dar will relish telling me the answer, and I shall be fully satisfied. Number 15, on page 93. Complete the full recovery of the agreed tram compensation claim against Nottingham City Council. I'm sure Mr. Dar is going to tell me that the money is in the bank and ready to be spent, because this has been going on for I don't know how many years, and we've been given assurances that all the money is going to come from Nottingham City Council. Not a problem. And can I also ask, Chairman, on page 94, number 5 there, failure of strategic leisure initiatives. Work with Chilwell School to assess leisure facility options at Chilwell Olympia Sports Centre and report back to Cabinet. We seem to, by and large, forget Chilwell Olympia. I mean, we've closed Kimberley, but now we forget Chilwell Olympia, which, although it never had a swimming pool, is a very important asset. Of course, in the south of the borough, heaven forbid it should be something in the north of the borough, in the south of the borough. And I just wonder how long this work's been going on and when we're going to get some sort of report. I'm sure it will come to Cabinet, but this is a failure of strategic leisure initiatives that we have to take account of, and I'm wondering what's happening there. And then finally, Chairman, number 8, establish a cross-party members group supported by key officers in leisure, property and regeneration to identify leisure opportunities in the north of the borough. I don't remember that happening. It may have happened so long ago that at my age I've forgotten all about it, but nothing's happening north of the borough. Nothing's happening at all as far as that aspect of it is concerned.
Who wants to? Well, I would just say at this point that we have got officers online, and we have an officer in the room, but unfortunately the head of housing couldn't be here tonight, so we will try and answer any housing related things as well as we can. But if we need to get the head of housing to email councillors with a more definitive answer, then I will ensure that we do that. But you have a point on housing repairs. We'll come to the complaints later, but some of them are actually quite a worrying read, I have to say. LGR, I think we should have a separate
I agree with the councillor there. I think it's sensible to add that as an additional risk, given the context, given what's going to happen in the next couple of years and the way things are moving in terms of the various options and the implication for staff, buildings and our operations. So I think
it's a huge risk.
Yeah. I think through you, Chair, as well, and again, I do acknowledge that Councillor Owen did raise this at a previous meeting, and unfortunately we've just not put together a risk template for it. But like I say, we do consider local government reorganisation as part of the other individual risks, but we do accept that, yes, it's the biggest strategic risk that we're arguably the biggest strategic risk we're facing, so we will get something together.
And of course, one of the biggest risks, apart from everything else with staffing, etc., so the fact that the timescales that the government have come out with in the white paper are ridiculously tight. So if they're going to get extended and delayed, that's a risk in itself for councils. Well, yeah, that's not going to happen in my opinion, but that you go. Okay, there's some other questions as well.
I'm trying to do my best with
just if I can. I think we'll note the comments about housing repairs and certainly filter that back into the next strategic risk group meeting and make sure that residual risk score is accurate. And similarly with sickness levels, I think we kind of acknowledge that the council sickness levels are below national averages in terms of where we are, but they are something that we do monitor as part of our performance management arrangements, and again we'll make sure that residual risk score is accurate.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of leisure, myself and the business director of Leisure do meet the head at Chilwell That operation is going relatively okay in terms of its turnover and how it's operating. The main issue there really relates to the plans for the school to have a new school there, and they did have some positive news. I remember way before the election around some potential money, but that's all gone quiet with the new government because they're going to be prioritising their kind of plans around education. So I'd say in terms of how it's operating, it's going well, but in the future there is some uncertainty whether there'll be any money from government around leisure. But as far as concerned, now it's going well. In terms of the north of the borough, we've done a couple of things to try and mitigate some of the challenges. We've had a number of bursary contributions made to a number of voluntary community health groups to help them along particular groups around health. We've also had a big increase in terms of the UC of the exercise referral scheme at Greasley. But clearly, yes, there is a gap there, but it does come down to funding and prioritisation. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
In relation to in relation to the points raised on LGR, it has been mentioned a couple of times that there may be a risk that major capital projects have to be paused. Are the officers able to share the evidence base they have, or is this an internal risk assessment?
So this is based on, if you look at how LGR has been implemented across the country in different counties, inevitably, once the Secretary of State's made a decision to progress down LGR, it becomes a directive, an instruction from a minister, and that's inevitable to happen post-spring next year.
Okay.
And it's not just officers here that are saying that, the county officers saying it as well.
No, it's just...
I know that.
It's a process.
I just want to point out it's all officers all over the country that are subjected to it are saying this is going to happen.
No, and it's why I'd be keen to see the evidence base so I can properly scrutinise any of
Yes,
this.
that's fine. Yeah,
Thank
absolutely. And at the end of the day, why wouldn't you? Because if you're going to be going into a brand new council, is it sensible for a council that's no longer going to be to commit themselves to a £30 million project? You know, but there we go. We wait and see on that. There was also a question about tram compensation.
Yeah, so I confirm we've had 97.5% of what we were expecting. There's 2.5%. So I can tell you outside the meeting what the figure is because it's a commercial consensus figure.
With respect, Chairman, it's been 2.5% since I was in short trousers.
Not since then.
It seems like it. Time's just going. Time's going quickly, and we never get that. We never get that money.
And I'm frustrated. Like
and I we'll never get it before we've got the local government reorganisation. They won't have to pay it then. If we go into the city, they can wipe it off, write it off. We want that money now. We want it, and if we have to go to court, we should go to court. And
the lawyers are on it.
Yeah, the lawyers have been on it for years. You tell me that every time.
There'll be a lot of interest on it.
It's the same answer I get every time, and we don't get that money, and we should have it.
Okay. Yes, Tyler and Andy. Yeah.
Just coming out of the LGR discussions, I think risk 2 that's been identified, and I know expanded on Appendix 3, but is the risk associated with LGR 2 obtaining that adequate resource and the sort of follow-on that we've seen from the local government finance settlement? Is the risk the same across the board to all services, or is there sort of ring-fence funding that is at risk and sort of affects some services but not other, perhaps?
You've probably seen the paper that went to council last meeting. There's a whole range of potential risks, and I don't repeat it all, but essentially, if we go into LGR, there's a risk that resources will go into potentially higher need areas around the city. There's a risk that, for example, on housing, investment will go into high-rise blocks, and that's an issue. There's a risk that our rents will be impacted; they would converge to higher rents because we're lower rents. There's another risk around potentially, homelessness. We might get a bigger impact of that. And I can't hide away from the fact that we've got a really clean, green borough, and you can see resources potentially being sucked into, a wider conurbation city. Yeah. So that impacts us. And the other big thing, and again, you can't hide from it, is, the voluntary sector. We make some really good contributions to the community voluntary sector. And if you're into a larger metropolitan borough with major resource issues, there'd be less prioritisation around clean green areas in the voluntary sector. So you've got this reprioritisation towards area of high needs, which is not where Broxtowe is. So you can see impact on the environment, community sector, housing, and equally with capital projects. There may be projects, you know, within the wider conurbation that we prioritise, or let's say our leisure centre or our housing projects.
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify then, so it's not, those risks aren't just inherent once LGR has happened, but also there's that risk before it happens as well, in terms of the money that we're providing.
Once the decision's made, you're almost in that freeze situation where all decisions are paused, particularly around life projects.
Yeah. And there is the possibility that if it is decided and when it's decided that at the moment the plan is that we as borough councillors stay on for another 11 months after our terms is finished. Before that 11 months, at the start of that 11 months, there's going to be elections for a shadow authority, and county councillors will remain in place until the 1st of April 2028 and not 2029. So at one time, depending on who puts their name into the hat, you could actually be a triple hatter. So you could be on the borough council, the county council, and the shadow authority at the same time, which I think I might just walk away, to be honest. But that in itself is a risk. Who's looking at all this? You know, yes, Councillor Winfield.
Just a point of clarification. Are we then saying that the biggest risk is the liminal space between us being and us transitioning to another authority?
Well, yes, and the new authority, whatever that turns out to be. If it looks like it's going, we're going to have an urban authority and a mainly rural authority, which in itself causes us problems here in Broxton, because we have rural areas, as does Gedling.
Yeah, I mean, the other really good point made in the Chief Executive's report is around getting to detail around housing and economic growth, and how that develops in a new authority, because you could argue that for in this larger conurbation, more of that housing and development will be in our borough, and as it were, eat into the green space. I'm just developing an argument in the paper, which will impact on residents.
Yeah. And of course, don't forget as well that the three authorities that are rumoured, well, it's quite a strong rumour to be going in together, which is Gedling, us and the city. We own our housing stock, Gedling and the city don't. So what's going to happen there? These are all things that nobody
haven't got in stock.
No,
but
no.
Just the housing stuff.
Yeah,
So.
you know, has a civil servant in Whitehall thought about that? No. I tell you why, because civil servants in Whitehall don't know how local government works. Never have done, in my opinion, but that's another matter.
Andy wants to say something.
Yes, Andy, sorry, I did ask,
Yeah, before we move on, I'd just like to go back to this failure of ICT systems. I did bring it to Standards Committee, and you know, I was disappointed that nobody from ICT attended. So, you know.
Do you want to bring Greg on?
Yeah.
Greg, do you want to comment?
Greg, are you still there? I don't think he is.
Sorry, I am here, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Do you want to respond to Councillor Cooper's question?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I did bring to Standards Committee the problems that a lot of councillors have been experiencing with the IT system, particularly with not being able to get emails. I had to bring my computer in twice from Kimberley, left it for a couple of hours each time, and I know the councillors have had the same problems.
Before I can really answer the question, can I just ask, is this session being recorded?
Yes.
It is.
Then what I'll be able to do is I'll be doing a report anyway from back of a request in terms of questions around the ICT issues that have been happening, but I can't publicise what's happening in here given some of the security concerns.
Okay.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah, we understand what you say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get a written reply, won't we?
Yeah. Okay, and yes, go on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just before the last item that Andy brought up, we were given a long list of problems that local government reorganisation is going to bring, and all of them are going to be to the detriment of residents of Broxton. They're going to get no benefit out of this whatsoever.
Okay. Anybody else? Right, so we've got a proposed and seconder for the amendments to the strategic risk review. Can I see all those in favour? Okay. And anybody against? And abstentions? Right, okay, thank you very much. So that we move on to the complaint report, which is pages 97 to 168. So I might actually take it in the sections rather than page by page, but I'll wait till Alan's finished his introduction.
Through you, Chair. So this is the annual complaint report for the complaints we received in 24-25. So as you can see, it follows a standard format that all the complaints reports that come to this committee follows. Yeah. So sort of the headline of this is that for last year we received 429 stage 1 complaints, 81 stage 2 complaints, and 7 complaints are investigated by the Ombudsman. So that's actually an increase of stage 1 complaints, an increase of stage 2, and a decrease in the Ombudsman complaints. The Ombudsman at the moment are currently working to a 6 to 12 month period for investigation. So while we have a figure of how many complaints are currently with them, or a rough figure of how many are currently with them, it's potentially not the full amount of complaints that are currently with the LGO or the Housing Ombudsman. So as the complaint report goes on, there is a breakdown of the individual stage 2 complaints that were investigated and their outcomes. So that's showing that complaints were upheld if there were any specific outcomes relating to a complaint that required any sort of specific attention or action, and any sort of compensation payment that was made. And then Appendix 3 shows the breakdown of the complaints investigated by the Ombudsman as well. And I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, that's a noting report. I think we've already mentioned but I'm sure people might have questions about the housing repairs. I have to say I've read every single page of this, and one or two of the findings I found quite worrying, particularly the damp and mould issues. But we'll probably come on to those in a minute. Okay, anybody got anything to ask, say? Yes, sorry.
A preliminary comment, Chairman. This all goes to Cabinet as well, which seems to me to be daft. We're boiling our cabbages twice, and if you bear in mind that the last Cabinet agenda had 711 pages of wonderful bedtime reading, it seems to me to be a little pointless to be duplicating what really is the work of this committee in terms of dealing with complaints. So that's a general point. But Chairman, it's not just housing repairs. We've got a number of complaints about planning not correctly corresponding with the complainant. Planning are a department of this council that it is known that it's notorious to try and make contact with them. It is virtually impossible if you ring, and members of the public are only entertained to a call and to have the possibility of their call being answered between, I think it's 10:30 and 12 o'clock under the duty planner system. What I've also found is that the planning department don't identify to residents where there may be some dispute or some concern by residents as to the outcome of their planning application. The fact that they could contact their local councillor and who the local councillor is and give contact details. And often, although we try locally in Nuttall to ensure that residents, insofar as we can, are notified of planning applications and our availability. We accept that we can't possibly get to everybody as far as that is concerned. And I suspect a number of these complaints, the severity of them, or even the complaint as a whole, could have been eliminated if a local councillor had been involved. We get a lot of criticism over planning, generally as councillors, but many a time, if we intervene in time, we can steer a way forward. And there is a concern, I think, on the part of the planning department that we would ask for too many matters to be determined by committee. Well, so be it. So be it. That's democracy. And I don't care whether it's an inconvenience for the planners or not. So in order to try and improve the level of complaints that we've got regarding planning, I would suggest that the points I've made are taken on board and hopefully resolved. I'd like to pick up one complaint on page 111 against planning. Number 6, it says complaint upheld. And then I turn over the page and read through. And officers determined that the amended planning application didn't require a full resubmitted application, as the amendment was not a large departure. Statutory timeframes for the consultation had been provided correctly. Amended application, the planning team provided an additional consultation for the neighbouring properties, and the council is only required to consult on the first occasion, although it would be better if they'd consulted on the second occasion as well. Amended plans do not have a statutory requirement for the council to reconsult. However, the council undertook this process. As no objections were received during either consultation periods, the council deemed the application to be acceptable. Well, on this occasion, the planners seem to have done everything right, and yet the complaint's been upheld, which I find a bit surprising.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. Sorry, that's a typo in the report. That should read as complaint not upheld for number 6.
Right. Okay.
And sorry, just for the the first comment you made about the duplication of the 2 reports. So under our Constitution, Governance, Audit and Standards is the responsible committee for complaints. Under the Housing Ombudsman's Code for complaint handling, they also require this report to go to Cabinet as well. It has to go to, so as part of their statutory function, they require us to report that to Cabinet as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's the deputy leader that's the responsible councillor for that.
Yeah.
In cabinet. Yeah. Okay. Have you got any more points, Councillor? Yeah.
Well, certainly we haven't got time tonight on the housing repairs. It really is a catalogue of failure, and they are repeated failures. Lack of consultation, lack of communication, a 9-month delay in a door being repaired, and it goes on, and it's costing us thousands, or the housing revenue account, thousands in compensation, and we just don't seem to be getting anywhere. We hear time and time again that, oh yes, we've learned from all of this, and we're going to get better. Well, I do accept that some of these complaints are from a year or 2 ago. I accept that. But for goodness sake, this really is appalling. And I hold my head in despair, quite frankly, that we just do not seem to get to the bottom of this and get it sorted. And it's long overdue that it was sorted, and well, I'd be interested to hear what other people think.
Okay. That's you.
Yes, I've got several council houses, of course, in the ward that I represent, And over the years, yes, I have a lot of complaints. So if there's a complaint, they ring me. And I think recently, certainly in my area, it has improved. We've had a new officer who is very, very good. They ring me, I get on the phone to him, and it's sorted. So, you know, I have to say that recently it has improved.
Thank you. You can get the bus home.
It's actually, yes, I think those of us who've got substantial number of council houses will know who you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Any other issues? Yes, Pauline.
I will just say on the there's quite a number of complaints about damp and mould, and there is a new damp and mould policy. Came to Chair's briefing this morning, so that will be going to policy overview next week and then to cabinet.
Right.
And that should, I would hope,
Yeah.
make a considerable difference. What it does in particular is specify timeframes for, you know, initial investigation through to actually fixing stuff.
Okay.
And who is responsible for
Yeah.
each of those stages. So hopefully,
Yeah. So we need
will
to make sure that we have a proper look at it at the policy
yes,
overview.
yeah.
Don't
I had a
before
look
it
at it
goes
this
to cabinet.
morning, made some suggestions, and that will come to policy next week and then to
Okay.
cabinet.
Lovely. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, that's fine. Because that's a noting report, so that is noted. So we move on to the findings of fault determination reported by the Ombudsman, which again is another noting report. Do you want to introduce this? Page 169.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So this is just a report detailing the findings of fault that the Ombudsman, so both the local government and social care Ombudsman have found against us, and the housing repairs, the housing Ombudsman as well. So each of the appendices includes a specific report from the Ombudsman where they found specific fault. In terms of each of the individual cases, they've all been all the actions that the Ombudsman have suggested have been actioned. Everything's complete and all the cases are now closed as being complied with.
Right,
I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions? Yes, Councillor.
I wanted to pick up just one of the reports. I mean, we could pick on all of them. They're all pretty poor. But the one I want to pick up on is Appendix 3 on page 186, where we have got a resident living, it would appear, in a communal flat. The property has, I'm going on page 186, the two-bedroom flat, a communal area which is shared with other flats. And we've allowed another resident to have 5 dogs. 5 dogs in a flat. And we don't appear to have done anything about it. The woman concerned has got a young daughter who was terrified of dogs, and I can understand that. 5 dogs. What on earth are we thinking of as an authority? And page 187, paragraph 9E, the landlord responded to the stage 2 complaint, that it would not look to take tenancy enforcement action in the first instance. I'm sorry, but anybody with 5 dogs that are running wild and fouling a communal area, action should be taken in the first instance. I think they are in breach of their tenancy regulations and they should be out. I'm sorry, but they should. It is grossly unfair. This is one of the worst bits of antisocial behaviour that I think I've come across in any report. We get reports about community safety and antisocial behaviour where we've got a catalogue of policies that we've got, and we can't deal with this despite the policies and the partnership meetings. Someone with 5 dogs running riot, fouling an area, frightening a small girl. I don't know whether it's been resolved now. We haven't got anybody from housing here to tell us, have we?
Through you, Chair. So the part of the issue with this particular complaint is obviously before any tenancy action has to be taken, the appropriate investigations need undertaken by the tenancy team before they get to the point of making any sort of formal action. The process was then restarted as part of this complaint. I believe that the person who had made the complaint, when asked to submit the evidence, had actually refused to then provide the evidence to demonstrate any sort of form of tenancy breach. I'm not entirely sure where it's gone from that point, so I can double check with the assistant director to see how it's been resolved.
Chairman, if I may come back, I'm not surprised that a tenant doesn't want to get directly involved in supplying evidence to 5 dogs running wild and fouling. I hear this time and time again. Oh, send out a diary sheet. Send out a diary sheet. Our housing officers should have been round there knocking on the door and saying, have you got 5 dogs here? Well, they wouldn't have needed to have knocked on the door, would they? They'd only had to go to the communal area and sat for 10 minutes and watch them. It really annoys me intensely. We're always on the side of the ones that are perpetrating the nuisance, never on the side of decent people. I'm sick of it.
Yes, it's a very difficult area, this, isn't it? But I have a substantial number of housing association properties in Beeston North as well, on the north of the A52, and they seem to have a bit of a different approach. It's ASRA, the housing association, where they have one person who looks after an estate, and that person seems to be able to have quite a bit of power. Whereas we, and you're quite right, it's needed because we do need to have the actual evidence, but whilst the evidence is being sought, that doesn't mean to say that action shouldn't be taken. I agree with you, Councillor. I don't know whether this is possibly something that we could refer to overview, to actually have a look at how we deal with antisocial behaviour cases in our properties. What would people think about that?
Yeah, I think it's one we do.
Yeah. Yes.
I think Philip's right. You're dead on the point, Philip. I seem to scuff round the problem, don't we? You know, the problem's there, but scuff round it somehow. Saying, oh no, we know we've got a problem there, but we'll go round it some other way. Are you with me? Forget that, we'll nip round the other side. And I think, yeah, you're dead right. It needs sorting out. It needs a problem sorting as well. You look at lots of cases, especially in the areas where you live, antisocial behaviour all the time. And what's being done? Nothing. I can't see any answers to it. I can't see any results coming through neither. There's nothing reported on what actually actions are being taken. It's reported, but what actions are actually happening? And we don't know. And I think it's all wrong. And we should know what actions are going on. We should know exactly what's happening. And we don't get to know.
If it's okay, I know it's an autumn report, but we can make proposals within this report. I will recommend that we ask the overview committee to actually scope this and investigate this, because clearly things are happening where action should be taken almost straight away if they're in breach of conditions of their tenancy. And so we need to be confident that systems are in place to actually ensure that's happening. So I'll propose that from the chair. If somebody wants to.
I'm happy to second that, Chairman. But in this particular case, I think this committee, and I certainly, would like a detailed report on this particular case and where we're at with it and how we are dealing with it. 5 dogs.
I think I'll request that the head of housing sends us all a report of where we are on this. Yeah. I don't, it's a bit risky to do it in public, but if we have an email sent to each of us, that would be fantastic. So, I've made a proposal, it's seconded. Can I say all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, any more questions about the Ombudsman reports? No, that's fine. So again, it was a noting report. So that moves us on to item 11 on 219, which is the work programme. And again, we're asked to consider the work programme and resolve accordingly. So I'll propose that from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Yeah, Ken. Thank you. So has anybody got anything to say about the work programme? So we've got until November's on there, but our work programme, sorry.
At least add LGR on as something that we...
Well, it will come up. Yeah, 22nd September. By then we will have a new risk for local government reform, so it will come up. Yeah. Okay. So is everybody happy with that? Yeah, lovely. Can I see all those in favour? Snoot Gamis. Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you very much for your time. Oh,
can I just raise a question? The thing I raised about the ICT. Yes. I don't know whether it was scrutiny that I reported it to. Okay.
That's right. It was.
All right. Just for the minutes. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was discussed at the meeting, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah. Well, cabinet next Tuesday.
No, we should be on.